The Philadelphia 76ers are now coming off back-to-back losses and have dropped to 10-5 on the season. After the hot start, it feels like they've come back to reality a little bit, and I want to break down a little about what to take away from those past two losses. Before I dive fully into it, I do want to make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button. At this point in time, 82.3% of you guys watching the channel have not subscribed just yet. We're in the full swing of Sixers season, have plenty of big plans here at Sixers Digest, and I want everyone to join the Sixers Digest family right along with me. So without further ado, let's get into the topic of today. I want to begin by reflecting on that Cavaliers game, that being a part of the in-season tournament. That was one that stung a little bit worse than the loss to the Timberwolves. I'm recording this a little bit after this. This will probably drop in the morning, so it's probably last night by the time this is up. But that Timberwolves loss with no Joel Embiid in the lineup, not the biggest concern to me, but there's still some takeaways from both games that I want to bring up and voice my strong opinions on. So let's begin by talking about the Cavs game as a whole. Cavs winning 122-119 in overtime. Joel Embiid did ultimately foul out of that game and miss the ending of it. Still ended with 32 points, 13 rebounds, 5 assists. Tyrese Maxey did his thing with 30 points, 6 assists, 4 rebounds as well. But the game as a whole, it started right in the first half, that there was a lack of energy coming out. The tone was not set early on, and then they kind of had to dig themselves out of that hole throughout that matchup. Now, that was especially frustrating because whether you can feel your opinions of the in-season tournament or not, I will show you guys a little bit of the court when I bring up two specific plays when I talk about this in a minute, but this did eliminate the Sixers from the in-season tournament potential. There is a slight chance they can sneak in with a bunch of tiebreakers, them getting a wild card spot, but if I'm being honest, I think it's very unlikely that that is the case. And during this game, the Sixers, in order to advance into the group stage of the in-season tournament, they needed to win and they needed the Pacers to lose. The Pacers ultimately did come out winning against the Hawks, but for most of that game, it looked like they were going to lose that matchup, which made it even more frustrating in the way that the Sixers were playing. And to dive in specifically on a couple of stats that I do want to take away here, number one is rebounding. 56-44, the Cavaliers out-rebounded the 76ers. I get it that they are a big team, but that just should not happen to that extent. And kind of in a similar breath here, the points in the paint, Cleveland Cavaliers was 68 in the matchup, with the Sixers with just 52. So a 16-point swing there. Think about 68 of the total that they scored as a team. 68 out of their 122 coming in the paint. It does not get much easier than that. And when you have a player like Joel Embiid as the anchor of their team, that can just not happen on a night-to-night basis. And I know the Cavaliers have a unique construction as a roster, that they do have these big men with Jared Allen, with Evan Mobley. They have other guys that rotate in and can make a difference. Tristan Thompson played pretty well in the matchup. I will tip my hat to him there. But Joel Embiid has to dominate in these situations, both on the rebounding specifically and in the paint as a rim protector. That was what rubbed me the wrong way specifically in that matchup, is he did not set the tone defensively. It was a lazy effort on the defensive end. It did not feel like he was engaged in a way that I have not really seen from him much this year. We absolutely have in past years, and that's been a consistent problem with Embiid. I think that's something that rubs people the wrong way about Joel specifically, and I don't want to see those habits begin to sneaking back. He did get the night off tonight against the Timberwolves, so hopefully he comes back with some renewed energy when they take the court again on Saturday, but that doesn't make any better that they did lose to this Cavaliers team. And to touch a couple more things as far as the box score here, I did want to pull up a couple guys off the bench that I just want to point out. As a whole, not a lot of bench scoring. That when you look at that, 3 points from Robert Covington, 0 from Marcus Morris, who played pretty poorly in that one, in that brief stint. Daniel House Jr. with 7 points. He's had a bit of a resurgence. Paul Reed with 4 points. Patrick Beverley, 21 points, 2 points, and those 2 points were huge in that matchup. That there was a floater, a game-tying floater, him taking control. He played a huge part in creating that spark. One of the positive takeaways that I have from this matchup is Nick Nurse's willingness to go with the hot hand. That Pat Bev had it going, made a strong performance, and he helped elevate this team around him in a way that the Sixers needed, and Nurse rolled with that. We saw the 21 minutes, him playing the most out of this bench group. Nurse is very clearly still figuring out this rotation, what the expectations are, but it was nice to see Patrick Beverley get kind of his moments of shine. Now, to get down to the crunch time of the games that I do want to touch on, the Sixers had 2 chances to win this game very clearly, and they came up short in both of them. I want to talk about both these plays. I personally, to kind of preview this a little, I'm absolutely 100% okay with both of these looks. In fact, I really like the second one that I'm going to show with Maxey, but I know there's a lot of people that are pretty up in arms about it, so I do want to get into it. So let's begin and set the stage. At the tail end of regulation, Joel Embiid has a chance to win the game for the Sixers, and he comes up with this shot here. So I get the frustration that you want the big man to assert himself, get down on the post, use his physicality, his 7'2" frame, use that dominant strength, and get to the rim. But the reality is, it is harder to do that than most realize. That the second that Joel goes down, dips his shoulder, gets into a post-up position, he's getting help defense. Guys are coming in the double. And I know you can throw out, well, then you make the right basketball play. You kick out, you get an open three, etc. And once again, that sounds great in theory, but in actuality, that is a much more difficult process. And Joel specifically and the Sixers as a whole have gained some significant strengths and it's taken some significant step forwards in making that possible and executing in an effective way. But that's not a strength of Joel's. He's not a natural playmaker. He's not a guy that is super comfortable finding guys out of doubles. That's been, I would argue, the number one weakness throughout his entire career. So to kind of have him just, I don't even want to say settle for this jumper because that is one of his bread and butter shots that I've seen him make that specific shot hundreds of times throughout his career and even with the game on the line, that it is a make or miss league, that I'm okay with living and dying with that shot, and especially because it clanked off the rim, they go to overtime, they get a second chance. And the reason that I'm encouraged by this shot specifically, I know you can nitpick, you can be frustrated about it, but I like that Nick Nurse just looked at Joel Embiid and said, you're the MVP of the league, you're our best player, go get to your spot, knock it down, and then let's win this game. I love that that's mindset. Obviously did not work out. They did not get the job done. But you know what? Just 15 games in the regular season, 14 games at that point in time, that is okay to have these growing pains together. That Nick Nurse needs to figure out what he needs to do, get this team to buy into him and him buying into these players, getting them on the same page. So I thought that was a nice moment as far as the continued progression. Once again, I know that it did not get the results. It is a make or miss league, but I was still satisfied with that. But the play that I liked even more, was even more encouraged by, came at the tail end of overtime where Tyrese Maxey had a chance to get the win. So I'm going to play this play here and then I want to talk about this as well. So that play I love specifically there. Coming out of the timeout, we have the ball up in the side out of bounds near half court there. You bring Joel out. You have Tyrese Maxey using his speed as his advantage, getting downhill, attacking the paint as one of the best finishers across the NBA. It just didn't fall. And it is frustrating that the shot did not go in, but you can't ask for a much better look at that. We're talking about one of the premier finishers across the NBA. Yes, Tyrese Maxey deserves to be in that category. Getting a look at the rim, and it just did not quite go down. It sucks. It did not happen, but the play design, everything that happened, I'm totally cool with. I like the process that lead up. I like that there was giving Tyrese Maxey this opportunity to step up and hit the big shot, and it was cool to use Joel Embiid as that distraction as it was a point in the game where he did not have it going and had just come up short in regulation. So overall, I do like it. I know there was a third opportunity where Tyrese Maxey had kind of an awkward sidestep three. Not as cool with that one as far as play design, but the game was more or less lost at that point, and that was a bit of a prayer. That would have tied it, but did not fall. It is all good. It is a tough loss, one that I do wish the Sixers would have won, that I think if they'd come out with an earlier focused effort, that they were trailing for the entirety of that first half. If they'd come out with a focus from the start, it would have been a different story, but ultimately it is one you have to wash your hands on and move on to the next. And unfortunately for the Sixers, that next up was not long, as they had to travel directly to Minnesota to face the Timberwolves, which are sneaky a very talented team across the NBA this year. That Anthony Edwards looks to have continued to progress. Rudy Gobert looks back to being a competent basketball player in a way that he was not last year. Karl Anthony Towns, one of the premier big man shooters across the NBA, even in the conversation as just a true legitimate shooter in the NBA, as well as some nice pieces along the edges with guys like Naz Reid, who had a really nice game today. A ton of guys, Mike Conley, that can just make a positive influence. Now, to dive into the box score of this matchup, the Timberwolves getting a 112-99 victory in this game. Not a lot of scoring going on from the Sixers' perspective. When you look down, nobody eclipsing more than 16 points. Marcus Morris tied for the leading scorer with 16 points there. Tyrese Maxey also with 16 points. D'Anthony Melton with 16. Maxey 7 of 19 from the field and 0 for 5 from 3. You never like to see that. Tobias Harris with 15 points. He did have 13 in the first half and then slowed down. And I do like that spark off the bench from Paul Reed. 10 points, 9 rebounds. Those 4 blocks were very impressive. And it was a little bit surprising. I think everyone was surprised to see Marcus Morris, see his name called and elevated into the starting lineup. Now, I'll start with Marcus Morris has looked like a shell of himself, really, for the past couple of years in the NBA. I like Marcus Morris. He's a guy that, at a point in time, was a very effective NBA player, a guy who could get a bucket on just about every occasion. He's a guy who's very happy to be back in Philadelphia, loves the community, does a lot of good, is a Philly product, a North Philly guy. But it does feel like he is past his prime. And I was very discouraged to see him getting that starting nod, especially as we continue down this path of progression for Paul Reed. It felt like the moment. But I will say, to Marcus's credit, and he started off this game really poorly, picked up 2 fouls in 3 minutes, but The third quarter was the first time that it opened my eyes. Okay, maybe there is a role for this guy. And I think the mentality for the Sixers in this specific matchup is they wanted to play some 5-out basketball. They wanted to push the pace. They did not want to have a traditional big man, that they wanted to zig as the Timberwolves zagged. As they have this Twin Towers lineups with Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns, Nick Nurse believed the way to combat that was by running and gunning, getting on the break, playing small ball, and being faster. Now, that did not work to any extent. In fact, the Sixers fell behind early, but I do understand the logic behind that. Now, as far as my concerns, there's a couple things here. Number one that I want to start with, and we'll pull this back up, the box score here. We did see some garbage time at the end. Mo Bamba with 6 minutes of play. He did add 4 points in that matchup, 2 rebounds as well. But what's very concerning to me is if Mo Bamba did not get any minutes in these past 2 games, what is the point of him being on this roster? That these were 2 tailor-made opportunities for him to have an opportunity. Number one against the Cavs, who play a front court of Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. And then tonight, without Joel Embiid, without the starting center, the MVP of the league, Marcus Morris starts at center. Then we get Paul Reed. We even saw a little bit of Rocco at the 5. There were so many opportunities where it turned into Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns getting down low against Tobias Harris and Nicholas Batum. That is just never going to work. That Rudy Gobert is 5 or 6 inches bigger than Tobias Harris, and probably even bigger than Nick Batum. I think Tobias has a little bit on Batum specifically. At least Mo Bamba is a legitimate 7-footer. At least he has legitimate big man size that he can battle with a guy like Gobert. And that really was a big part of the difference tonight. It was not the lone reason that they lost, but tonight was eye-opening to me for the fact that, okay, we have to accept that Mo Bamba is unfortunately just a wasted roster spot. That I don't see this guy getting any sort of significant burn for the length of the season if it did not happen in tonight. Because this was a tailor-made opportunity for Bamba to make an impact. I don't know what he did to get in the doghouse of Nick Nurse. I don't understand. I do believe the talent's there. Like, I understand there's issues with the motor. There's complaints, all of these things. But this is the same dude that I've seen go head-to-head with Joel Embiid in years past. This is the same guy that I've seen scored 37 points with Joel Embiid as his primary defender when he was playing with the Magic. That dude has to be in there somewhere, and it is frustrating me to not at least try. I would have rather seen him absolutely fail and look terrible out there, and then we can say, okay, there's no reason to ever go back to that again. But that was not the case. And the second concern, number 2 here, is for the first time all season, Tyrese Maxey looked tired. That I know he's young. He's 23 years old. He's gotten just permanent energy about him, it feels. But it looked like some tired legs. And to follow along with this for the length of the season, let's look at the overall minutes per game leaders. Tyrese Maxey, number 1 across the entire NBA with 38.4 minutes per game. As I mentioned, I know he's young. He can take it. He wants to play every minute of every game. But burnout is a real thing, and the focus still needs to maintain on the playoffs. This is a common complaint of Nick Nurse. He played Fred VanVleet so much. He played Pascal Siakam so much. These guys in Toronto, he ran them into the ground. And by the way, you look a little bit lower on this list, right there at number 6, Tobias Harris at 36.5 minutes per game. So having 2 Sixers in the top 6 for minutes per game is concerning at this point in the season. I'm happy that Joel Embiid is not one of the parties involved because he just simply has a body that could not take this type of running. I'm happy that he got the night off tonight, but there are some issues that need to be addressed. Keep in mind that the priority is the playoffs. The priority is figuring out what the rotation is, who are the guys that need to be in, who are the guys that need to be out, who are the guys that need to be kept fresh for when the moment matters most. Those are all things that I would like to be refocused a little by Nick Nurse. These are still just 2 bumps in the road, not something that I'm super concerned about. I think the Timberwolves are a better team than they get credit for, and I think the Sixers have just come out flat. That there has not been a game yet this season where the Sixers had no business even being in. They've competed on a night-to-night basis, and that is a good thing. But they will be back in action on Saturday against the Oklahoma City Thunder. If they do not bring their A game, come in focused for that matchup, they will get run off the floor. That this Thunder team is no joke. I need to see the Sixers adjust, and it is time for a statement win to kind of get back on track for that one. For now, that's all I got for you guys tonight. Thank you guys for watching this video. Once again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button for Sixers Digest. Drop me a comment. Let me know what you're thinking about these 2 losses, your level of concern at this point in this game. They have a tough stretch of games coming up, so I will probably have some stronger takeaways when we have some of these measuring stick matchups. But for now, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to stay posted for the next one, and I will talk with you next time right here on Sixers Digest.